welcome to my Learn How to Crochet video. I'm very excited that you joined me today, and I'm happy that you're about to learn to crochet. So let's get started with the basics. I have my crochet hook. I decided to use a size I, 5.5 millimeter. I think when you're starting out, the bigger the hook, the better. You don't want to use anything too small because then it will be hard to see your stitches, and it'll just in general be harder to work with. I also wouldn't recommend anything too large because then you'll kind of have the problem in reverse. Things will be a little bit hard to work with because they're too large. So I recommend either a G, H, or I size hook. A J would also work, but stick with those medium size hooks to begin with. As for yarn, I recommend a medium weight yarn, preferably a lighter color. Darker colors are going to be harder to see and harder to work with. So we're going to get started with a slip knot. If you already know how to do a slip knot, go ahead and skip this part. Otherwise, it's very simple to do. You're going to take your yarn, you're going to crisscross it slightly so that you're about to form a loop. Take your longer end of your yarn and run it through that loop and pull. That makes a slip knot. What's great about the slip knot is that if you decide to take out your work, poof. If you make an actual knot in your yarn, it's going to be a lot harder to take out. So get started with your slip knot, and you can adjust the size to meet the size of your hook. You don't want to pull it too tightly onto your hook. You want to leave a decent amount of space, as you can see right there. If you pull it too tightly, it'll be really hard to work with. It's going to be kind of stuck to your hook. So leave a little bit of give. As you can see right there, there's a tiny little space between the loop and the hook. So to get started, we're going to take the long end of the yarn, the short end of the yarn where you started your slip knot. I recommend you kind of keep that out of the way. Maybe hold it with your hook hand. So to begin, we're going to make a chain stitch. To make the chain stitch, you take the long end of your yarn and you're going to do what's called a yarn over. You're going to bring it around your hook. Always bring it from under and over the hook. Never like that. Always bring it from around and over the hook. Then you're going to take this beginning loop and you're going to pull it over what you just did, and that's called your yarn over. And that makes one chain. There is your very first chain. I'm going to repeat the process. Yarn over, bring that loop over the hook. Now you have chain number 2. Now you'll notice that I have the long end of the yarn around my finger here. That's something that at first you might not feel comfortable doing. You might just want to do a yarn over like that and just bring, see, I did it just by habit, but a lot of people just prefer to do a yarn over like this and then they pull the loop over the hook like that. As you get a little bit more comfortable with crochet, try that out and see how that feels, putting it over your, so the hand opposite your hook hand, because that will later on help with your tension. Otherwise you're going to have stitches all different sizes. But just to practice, do whatever feels comfortable. If you're more comfortable going like that, that's fine too. Let's do a couple more. Alright, so now we have a couple of chain stitches. I you're probably wondering, how do I get to making a scarf or a blanket from this itty bitty chain stitch? Well, let's work on that. That's called the single crochet stitch, the next stitch up from the chain stitch. So we're going to be working into these chain stitches. I would recommend when you make your beginning chain stitches, go ahead and make them as loose as possible while not being, ridiculously oversized. Because if you make them very, very tight, you're not going to be able to work into these stitches. And for the single crochet stitch, we're working into these chain stitches. So we're going to make what's called the foundation row. And to make that, using single crochet, we're going to work into the next chain from our hook. So in patterns, you'll often see this called the second chain from hook. So you can see the stitch that you're in by pulling your hook up a little bit. See how I'm coming out of that stitch right there? We're not going to work into that stitch. That's a stitch we're already in. We're going to work into the very next one, which is this one. You're going to poke your hook right through. Then, guess what? You're going to do the yarn over again. You're going to bring your yarn over and around, and that stitch that you just poked into right here, you're going to bring that over your hook, over that yarn over. Now you're going to have 2 loops on your hook. So whenever we're working into our stitches, if we wanted to work into our very next one, we have to have only 1 loop left on our hook. You're never working into another stitch, at least not in single crochet, where you still have 2 loops on your hook. So let's get rid of that other loop. We're going to yarn over again, and we're going to pull now through both loops. Congratulations, you just made your first single crochet. And doesn't look like very much right there, but that is your very first single crochet stitch. So now again, we need to work into our next chain stitch. But how do I know which one that is? I'm going to pull up on my hook a little bit, and what do I see moving around? I see this right here moving around. That is the stitch that I'm already in. Not going to work into that. I'm going to skip that and move on to the next stitch. So that's how you know which one to work into. We're going to yarn over the hook and pull that right off the hook. Now we're left with 2. What do? We want to get rid of that extra one, right? Going to yarn over the hook and pull through both stitches. Now you have 2 single crochet stitches. We're making progress. I'm just going to work through the rest of the row very slowly. Again, do what feels comfortable for you. As you can see, I'm going into the stitch, yarning over, and sort of using my hook to pull through, as opposed to moving the stitches around manually. But at first, you may feel more comfortable sort of doing it manually, like that, pulling it off your hook with your other hand, as opposed to just moving your hook around to to make the stitches. So now I'm at my last stitch. Congrats! You just made your foundation row for single crochet. And there it is. Doesn't look like much right now, but this is, no pun intended, the foundation for many different kinds of projects that you can make with just single crochet. Scarves, blankets, even hats. But we can't stop there, can we? Can't make very much with this, just this. So, how do we make more rows? Well, remember the chain stitch? Once we get to the end of our foundation row of single crochet, we're going to make one chain. Why are we making the chain? Because we're about to make another row. So once you've made your chain one at the end of your foundation row, I'd like you to turn your work, and you're going to start working the other way now. From left to right, from right to left, I'm sorry, if you're a right-handed crocheter. So you're going to be going the same direction that you did before, but your work is now completely turned. So on our foundation row, we were working into the chain stitches. This row, we're working into the single crochet stitches that we made in our foundation row. So it's going to look a little bit different, but the principle is overall the same. So I'm going to start by checking which stitch do I go into. Let's pull up on the hook. Oh, I can see that this is the chain that I made when I turned. I don't want to work into that. I want to work into my first stitch of the row, which is right here. Now the difference between what we were doing last row, the foundation row, and this row, is that we're going to be poking underneath the entire single crochet stitch. So on our last row, we were just kind of poking through one chain. This time, we're going to poke right here through to the other side. You're going to notice that you have an entire stitch on your hook now, instead of just one loop of the chain, which you had last time. But the principle's the same. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull that entire single crochet stitch off the hook. Okay, this looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? It's similar to what we did last row. It is what we did last row. We have 2 loops left on our hook. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through them. Now you've made a single crochet stitch on top of another single crochet stitch. Again, pulling up on my hook. Okay, I'm not going in there. That's the stitch I'm in. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to poke underneath. I have the entire stitch now on my hook. I'm going to pull that through. So I just got rid of that stitch that I poked through. It's off of my hook. Yarn over, pull through. It's starting to come together, isn't it? So I'm going to finish this row, and I'm going to do it slowly so you can just see my movements. Here's my last stitch of the row. And there is your first actual single crochet row, the last one we called the foundation row. From here on in, all of your other single crochet rows are going to look exactly like the one that I just showed you. So you're going to chain one, you're going to completely turn your work over, and you're going to start all over again. So you now know how to do the single crochet stitch. You know how to do the chain stitch. Congratulations, you have everything you need to make lots of different fun crocheted projects. You could make a scarf, you could make a blanket, anything that's a straight back and forth block, you can make it. Pot holder. Way to go, and welcome to the wonderful world of crocheting. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about how to crochet, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be putting up a lot more videos on how to make different stitches, little tips and tricks, and also some fun patterns. Thanks for watching.